The evening had been warm, relaxed, and almost perfect. The entire family was gathered around Marcus's large dining table, enjoying the final course of the meal. My mother proudly placed her famous homemade apple pie in the center, filling the room with the sweet smell of cinnamon and baked apples. Laughter echoed through the house as everyone reached for another slice. Then Marcus decided to speak. Leaning back in his chair with a glass of wine in his hand, he looked across the table at my 17-year-old son. "So, David," he asked with a confident grin, "have you figured out what you're doing after graduation?" David smiled politely, although I could tell he was nervous with so many relatives watching. "I've been thinking about starting at community college," he answered. "After that, I'd like to transfer to a university and study business management." For a brief second, the room fell completely silent. Then Marcus laughed. It wasn't a small laugh. It was loud enough to make everyone stop eating. "Community college?" he repeated, shaking his head. "Kid, let me save you some disappointment. With your grades and your situation, you'd better start looking for a job pushing a broom or mowing lawns. That's where most people end up. Nothing wrong with honest work, but don't fool yourself into thinking you're going to run a company someday." A few people around the table chuckled. Jennifer covered her smile with a napkin, pretending she wasn't laughing. My son lowered his eyes to his plate. I watched his fingers tighten around his fork. Marcus continued as if he were giving a motivational speech. "These days, every teenager thinks they're going to become some big executive. Somebody has to do the jobs nobody else wants. That's reality." A couple of relatives nodded in agreement. No one defended David, not my parents, not my cousins, no one. I recognized the expression on my son's face immediately. I'd worn that same expression for years, whenever Marcus decided to make himself look bigger by making someone else feel smaller. I placed my fork on my plate and looked directly at my brother. "Actually," I said calmly, "David's teachers believe he has a real talent for business. They've been encouraging him to continue his education." Marcus dismissed my words with a wave of his hand. "Teachers tell every kid they're special." He took another sip of wine before adding, "The real world doesn't hand out trophies. Success takes connections, money, and the right people. Without those, dreams stay dreams." His words hung heavily in the room. David didn't say another sentence. Neither did I. Not eye crack, I let the silence settle before speaking again. "Sounds like business is treating you well," I said, keeping my voice steady. Marcus smiled proudly. "Better than ever," he replied. "We just signed the Morrison contract, $3 million over the next 2 years. We're opening 3 new offices, expanding the team, and moving into a premium office downtown." The entire table erupted with congratulations. Dad slapped him on the back. Mom beamed with pride. My cousins bombarded him with questions about the new offices, company vehicles, and future plans. Marcus soaked up every compliment like a celebrity walking a red carpet. When the excitement finally settled, I asked a simple question. "So, how are the quarterly financial reports coming along?" Marcus blinked. "The reports?" "Yes," I said, "the ones due next week. The Morrison contract requires updated financial statements, payroll records, tax documentation, and expense reports." His confident smile faded just a little. "My accountant handles all of that," he answered. "I know." I took a slow sip of water. "I am your accountant." The room became quiet again. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mom glanced back and forth between us. Marcus forced a laugh. "Well, yeah, that's your job." "Is it?" I asked. I unlocked my phone and opened my invoicing records. "According to these files, you haven't paid me for 8 months." Marcus's smile disappeared completely. "You currently owe me $42,000. No one spoke. I continued calmly. "That doesn't include the emergency weekend calls, the last-minute payroll corrections, or the financial projections I prepared for your expansion plans." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad accidentally dropped his fork onto his plate. The sharp sound echoed across the dining room. Marcus cleared his throat. "We're family," he said. "I thought we understood each other." "We did," I answered quietly. "Our understanding was that you would pay your invoices." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You kept asking me to wait, first until business improved, then until the Morrison contract closed, then until the expansion was finished. Somehow there was never enough money to pay me. I looked around the beautifully renovated dining room, but there was enough money for this remodeled house, your luxury SUV, expensive furniture, and catered family dinners. No one looked comfortable anymore. The laughter from earlier had completely disappeared. For the first time that evening, Marcus looked less like a successful businessman and more like someone realizing his carefully built image was beginning to crack. Marcus finally found his voice. "You're seriously bringing this up during dinner?" he asked, forcing a smile that fooled no one. "This is a family gathering." I looked him straight in the eyes. "No," I replied. "You made it a family gathering when you embarrassed my son in front of everyone." The room was so quiet that even the ticking clock on the kitchen wall seemed loud. Marcus crossed his arms. "I've paid you plenty's fuzu over the years." "Not recently." I held up my phone. "For 6 years, I've handled every financial record your company has needed. Every payroll report, every tax return, every expense account, every bank reconciliation, every quarterly statement." I paused just long enough for everyone to absorb my words. "When your business loan was approved, I prepared the financial package. When the tax authorities requested additional documentation last year, I organized every record. When you submitted the bid for the Morrison contract, I spent nearly 16 hours reviewing your numbers so your proposal would stay profitable." Marcus avoided my eyes. "So yes," I continued, "your company may have your name on the front door, but a huge part of its financial success came from work you barely acknowledged." Jennifer finally spoke. "Maybe this isn't the right place for this conversation." "It became the right place the moment David was humiliated in front of this table," I answered calmly. I turned toward the rest of the family. "Did any of you know he hasn't paid me in 8 months?" No one answered. "He owes me $42,000. The silence was overwhelming. Uncle Tom slowly lowered his glass. Even my father couldn't meet my eyes. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "I've just been busy. Cash flow has been tight." I couldn't help noticing the irony. "Tight?" I repeated. "You've talked all evening about your new office, your company vehicles, your expansion plans, and a multi-million-dollar contract." I glanced around the beautifully decorated home. "This house wasn't cheap either." His face flushed deep red. "Money wasn't the problem," I said quietly. "Respect was." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, he had no clever response. Everyone at the table could finally see the truth. The successful businessman they admired had built much of his reputation on work he hadn't even bothered to pay for. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to regain the confidence that had vanished only moments earlier. "You can't seriously be thinking about walking away," he said. "We've worked together for years." "I have," I replied. "But today changed everything." I stood from my chair and gathered my phone and keys. "Effective immediately, I'm no longer handling your company's finances." His eyes widened. "What?" "You heard me." The words landed like a hammer. "You'll need to find another accountant to prepare your quarterly reports, payroll records, tax filings, and everything else." Marcus let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, stop being dramatic." "I'm not." I looked directly at him. "I'm setting a professional boundary that should have been set years ago." His confidence finally cracked. "The reports are due next week," he admitted quietly. "I know. My records, the software, only you know how everything is organized." "I know. You can't leave me like this." I folded my arms. "You had 8 months to value my work." Nobody at the table spoke. Marcus turned toward our parents. "Dad, say something." Dad sighed heavily but remained silent. Mom wiped tears from her eyes, unable to look at either of us. Marcus looked back at me. "I'll pay you." "You already should have." "I'll pay everything." "Eventually?" I asked. "After another contract? After another excuse?" He lowered his head. There wasn't an answer. I reached into my bag and removed a neatly prepared folder. I expected this conversation might happen someday. I placed it on the table. Inside is a complete statement of every unpaid invoice, every overdue balance, and every hour I've worked without compensation. Marcus stared at the folder but didn't touch it. You'll receive the official copy from my attorney on Monday. Jennifer's face turned pale. You're involving a lawyer? I'm protecting my business. I looked around the room one final time. I spent years believing that because we were family, respect would eventually follow. I shook my head. I was wrong. The room remained completely silent. No one laughed anymore. No one defended Marcus. For the first time that evening, everyone understood that this wasn't just about unpaid invoices. It was about years of disrespect, broken promises, and a father who had finally decided that protecting his son's dignity mattered more than protecting his brother's pride. Without saying another word, I picked up my coat and walked toward the front door. No one tried to stop me. Behind me, I heard Marcus call my name, but I kept walking. Outside, the cool night air felt like a relief after the tension inside the house. David was already sitting in the passenger seat, staring through the windshield. As soon as I got into the car, he looked at me. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I smiled, though my hands were still trembling from everything that had happened. "I will be." For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that comes after years of holding everything inside. As I pulled away from the house, David finally broke it. Did Uncle Marcus really mean what he said about me? His voice was calm, but I could hear the hurt beneath it. I glanced at him before returning my eyes to the road. "No," I said firmly. He spoke from arrogance, not truth. But what if he's right? What if community college isn't enough? What if I fail? I slowed the car at a red light and turned toward him. Listen to me carefully. You are not defined by someone else's opinion. Success isn't determined by where you begin. It's determined by your willingness to learn, to work hard, and to keep going when people tell you that you can't. David listened without saying a word. I've worked with wealthy business owners, executives, and investors for 15 years, I continued. The people who stay successful aren't always the smartest. They're the ones who respect others, keep learning, and never believe they're above anyone else. A small smile finally appeared on David's face. So, community college isn't something to be ashamed of? Absolutely not. It's simply one path. And sometimes it's the smartest one. He nodded slowly. Thanks for standing up for me. I reached across the center console and squeezed his shoulder. I'll always stand up for you. By the time we reached home, my phone had already started vibrating. Marcus. I ignored the call. A minute later, Jennifer. Then Dad. Then Marcus again. The calls kept coming one after another. I let every single one go to voicemail. For the first time in years, I realized something important. Peace doesn't always come from fixing broken relationships. Sometimes, it comes from finally refusing to let people take advantage of you.